Welcome back to Good Moms, Bad Choices. I'm Erica.
And I'm Jamila.
Oh, okay.
You know, we got a special guest. I got to use my full Muslim name today.
Oh. I was like, oh, Jamila, not Mila today. Okay.
For those of you who are confused, my name is Jamila, and I go by Mila. It's many layers to me.
It's also possibly Jamila, but,
my name is, no.
You let people call you that.
I live in the Valley amongst a lot of whites. I've grown up here my whole life, and I'm not correcting everybody every 5 minutes. So I've been a lot of things. I know I have white friends who are like, your name's Jamila? I'm like, yes, bitch, always has been. So, yeah.
Hi.
Hi. How you feeling?
I'm good, you guys. Welcome to Money March. If you're just joining us, we're focusing on finance and wealth and all things money and abundance this month. I'm really excited because we have a special guest today. We have none other than Thought Leader. And what do you like to be introduced as? Thought Leader?
Works for me.
Okay, Thought Leader.
I ain't crazy on titles.
No, okay, well,
yeah.
I mean either. Thought Leader 19 Keys is in the building.
Pleasure to be here.
Joining us today. So thank you, sir, for coming by.
And thank you for having me.
We've been wanting to interview you for a minute. We've been low key stalking you on the gram for a minute, watching your videos.
We're professional Instagram stalkers. So if you open up your DMs and happen to find 18 from us, ignore those. We got you here.
I appreciate professional.
I'm gonna go
stalking.
unsend them the moment this is done.
I mean, consistency, persistency. People count themselves out because their ego gets in the way of asking for what they want, and every single thing we've gotten is because we pull up in those DMs and we ask. Someone asked me that, who does your PR? I'm like, the Instagram DMs. Me. So, yeah.
Well, I don't really know much about you prior to what you do now. So can you give us a little backstory? Who is 19 Keys? Where are you from?
How did you become a major thought leader on the internet?
I grew up in Oakland, California. I was born in St. Louis, raised in Oakland, California. My story really starts early. I got videotapes of me speaking, on topics that I talk about now from a child. I feel like I was really groomed and raised to be who I am today. It's just, throughout iterations of my life and different cycles, I found my way into the streets and into different things. But as an adult, I found my way back to it. There was a time where I remember, being in the streets of Oakland. I used to speak at, sometimes they had protests and rallies. And oftentimes it'd be about social justice, right? And it would be no young black men speaking, but it'd be about young black men deaf a lot. So I just felt like there was no representation. So I remember I used to go and grab the mic or the bullhorn and speak and give a speech that was just, my passion at the time. And then weeks after that, there would still be people walking up to me and giving me compliments about, what I said and making suggestions of me to speak more and things of that nature.
Is this teenage Keys or is this?
Yeah,
20,
is this
20s?
Teenage? Let me see. How old was I at this shop? I think maybe 21, 20.
Okay.
You understand me? Yeah. I think about 21, 20. But, I grew up in a black Muslim environment in Oakland, California. And so I always seen black men speak up. You understand me? I already seen black men have their own enterprises and, have the ability to manage other people and to go out there and speak about social justice and things of that nature. So that was never something that was special to me. That was just normal to me growing up, right? We had a very interesting upbringing growing up in Oakland, California. So for me to, feel like that's a path that I could follow of being an eloquent speaker and the type of conversations that we have privately, bringing those to a public stage, that's just me being myself. I got 7 brothers, and 2 sisters. This is how we just talk. I had a shop in Oakland. People would come in there and they'd chop it up with me. And these are the conversations and debates and bills that we having. So, I always thought damn, if people actually, because I never hear our perspectives on the internet or in the news or on TV. So I'm damn, if people heard our perspective, they would love it or it'd change their mind. You understand me? So that always been my thought from a young age. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I remember it was Chabot College. They had a, opportunity that they sent to me to come up there and speak to the young men. And I guess some of the young men seen me on Instagram. I had maybe like 300-400 followers. But they just seen how I carried myself, things I talked about daily, the journey, entrepreneurship. As I was in this space of, I had just fired my job and I started my own business.
Whoa. What you mean you just fired your job?
I fired my job.
What the fuck does that mean?
No, firing is a two-way streak.
You quit.
You understand me? No, I fired them. I put them on, I let them know, you understand me, that I'm on the bigger and better things. I maxed out all that I can do here.
What job
and
was
y'all
that?
can no longer afford me. I worked at Prada. Right, so I was getting paid like 6 figures. It was a good job by any standards. Right, I learned a lot. I took all the information and knowledge, but I decided that, damn, I can't talk to people about independence if I'm not independent. I can't talk to people about these things, so I just felt like a hypocrite if I wasn't doing them myself. So instead, I decided to just go on that journey. So I truly believe that, the way a job can fire you, you can fire them. Why not? It's a business relationship, right? I do something for you, you do something for me. Right. If I feel like I have, outgrew the terms of this agreement, then you fired. Right. You can no longer do anything for me. Right. So I think that that's like a slave master mindset, that they only put the power on one side of the dynamic. Right. So hell yeah, I fired them. Then I took that information, knowledge, and experience, and I started to work for myself. Right. And so that afforded me the opportunity to feel free and to really chase things that I was driven and I felt that was purposeful in my life, right? And so at the time I had a clothing store. I used to design everything. I did the marketing, the branding. So I took all the skill sets that I learned from Prada and I said, damn, if I can make these people $3 million a year, what can I do for myself, right? So even if I just get a percentage of that, I'll be all right, right? And so, I was right. And so there were students that seen me talk about my journey and my process of development, and it was like, yo, we want him to come up there and speak. And so the guy agreed, that was the head of that particular program. I went up there, and I remember asking my bro, Jay Short, I said, listen, this is going to go viral. This is what I'm talking to him, right? I ain't never had nothing reach 1,000 views or nothing. But I just really believe that, this perspective is needed. And I when I go speak anywhere, I'm not just speaking to the students, I'm speaking to everybody. Right, I always tell them, like, the people that are there, they're there to witness the message that the world is going to receive as well, right? So I went in there, and I think about an hour and a half. I gave my lecture to the students and did a Q&A, and I remember I told him to send me the video because he started making these edits and cuts, and it kind of looked like everything you see on social media. Like, it looked like you trying to go viral or something, and really, I genuinely wanted people to get every aspect of the message. So I make sure that none of it could have been misunderstood. So I had all these lengthy captions. I make sure that there was sonic marketing where there was booms and every point that I wanted people to pay attention to. We put overlay text on it. And so when I dropped the first video, lo and behold, it went viral. Dropped the second video. I probably got like 50, 60 clips on one video.
What were you actually talking about?
I was talking about just the journey, mental development, that struggle on the journey of family versus friends, people wanting support, not supporting, seeing the vision, thinking long term, right? Being underestimated, how to use that as leverage on the journey. Like all of those things that, I think was really hard hitting for people as they were listening, because you had all these celebrities that was following, blogs was picking it up. Like every clip was just going crazy. Like they'd never heard the gospel before. You know what I'm talking about? So, and on from there, I always took that principle. Like I heard Kevin Hart say, when you have the fire lit, it's easier to keep throwing stuff in the fire than relight it, right? And so instead, I decided to keep the motion moving. And, fast forward 5-6 years later, we still in action.
So that was 5 or 6 years ago that you started on this journey of public speaking?
Yeah, I would say about 5 years ago.
I think it's powerful to, change your words and say, I fired my job. I think a lot of people, we become dependent on our jobs because it's our bread and butter. It's our shelter. It's our bills. And so people have dreams, and a lot of times ignore the dreams because they're married to these jobs. They feel slave to them because they feel like, well, if this doesn't work out, at least I have this consistent check. So I think that mindset shift is important, even the language that you use, and that you're like, I see that I'm making you money. And truly, when you work at a corporation like that, they don't give a fuck about the salesperson. Like, you're replaceable. But, a lot of times as Black people or as just, working people, we are so dependent upon those jobs that we don't have the fear prevents us from pursuing our dreams or our power and what we know we're good at. But, and I heard you say something about like, you feel like you were groomed for this from a young age. Like, what kind of household did you grow up in? How did your parents groom you for this? Like, what was your, like, were your parents married, or what was the ideology that like put you in that mind frame from a young age to have the courage to be like, I'm out of here, I'm good?
My parents, I grew up in a black Muslim household, and I think the earliest affirmation or thought they ever gave us is that you are a God, right? And in that journey of understanding what that meant, right, has been a lifelong journey. Right, and through different phases of my life, different mental developments, it means something different to me through each phase. But it has been the backbone of self-belief that has stirred me along the path of believing that, you know, the impossible is possible, right? So no matter times I got in trouble, right, I always thought that, no, but I'm a God, I can get myself out of it, right? I always took that level of accountability over my reality. Right. And so also like just that grooming process of being young in a black Muslim household, we were just taught about who the devil was and who God was. So I was never surprised about what I see in the world. Right. Because we was taught about the ills of society. Right. So as a young man, even in the streets, right, when I see, you know, the police do something, when I see cats in the street do something, I understand the mentality of where both sides come from. Right. It's like understanding the snake nature. And if it bites you, right, you don't get mad at the snake. That's just its nature. He didn't do nothing to you personally. And so understanding the nature of this world gives you the ability to deal with this world, right? And so for me understanding, you know, that there's many young black men and many young males who don't know what it's like to, you know, have, let's say, you know, a role model in their life, a father in their life, some knowledge of self in their life, right? I wanted to make sure that those are the keys that I give out, you know, because I believe we live in a world that is underfathered. You understand me? And so that lack of that means that there's a lot of people who don't get that ability to truly develop themselves with the right energies around. You understand me? And so I just kind of participate in that whole reality that, you know, if you have a gift, a talent, a skill, a know-how, or something to do, you have to utilize that in some capacity to add to the world, right, in some measurement of good.
I think about just education in general, and I'm curious to know your views on that. I don't know. Did you go to college?
I went to 1 year of college. I dropped out. I ended up catching a case.
Oh,
Not during college, but I was accused of something, and then I beat the case. I was accused of an assault, right? I ended up beating that case, and then I never ended up going back to college.
So what are your views on education? Because, I mean, obviously, you know, we're all, I think from an early age, we're primed to believe that going to college is going to set you up for success, that it's guaranteed to set you up for success. And we all know that it really sets you up for extreme debt.
Set you up to work for the man.
I mean, granted, I think there's benefits in education. I think now we live in a world where education is a lot more accessible. You can learn really and get really specific about what you actually care about now. But what are your views on, I mean, I'm assuming you're not really for college, or am I wrong?
Well, it depends, right? I think it's not as general and shouldn't be used as loosely as it always has, right? Like, of course, I'm pro-education. I believe learning, right? I'm pro-learning. I'm pro-knowledge, right? I'm pro-self-development. You can't get that without being educated, right? If you look at the way that all people have built their wealth, it has been through education, right? And so, you know, whether that's Asian, Jewish, white, Hispanic culture, whoever it is, right, education is a primary backbone in that process of their standards towards wealth, right? So you can't get rid of education because the people who don't know nothing can't do nothing, right? And so even when you look at any neighborhood in America, it's the low education that, you know, decreases their opportunities and the outcome of their life, right? And so that's the environment. So I'm definitely pro-education now when it comes to college. And even the public school system, I think that that's where all of that needs to be reformed, and all thinking around that needs to change. There are many elements about the public education system that is just a complete scam, right? For those who believe that it does anything else but to make you a worker of somebody else that, you know, has a job. It is meant to prepare you for the workforce, right, as human capital. It's not meant to make you smart, not meant to make you to, you know, an industry thinker, not meant to make you a genius, brilliant, to develop those aspects of yourself that allow you to flourish, and to live in purpose. That thing that people chase after they go through college and education and they in debt and they still don't feel like they purpose. right? They're living within a purpose, and they don't have drive towards the things that they learn at all, right? And so, you know, I heard Robert Smith say that 60% of black wealth goes towards, you know, college debt, right? And so when you think about just that staggering figure within itself, it has to be a scam, right? If that's not what got us out of the condition, and we're spending all of this money, and 60% of black wealth is being poured into debt, where would that money have been, right, if we utilize an alternative system, developing skill sets and finding a corrective vision towards education? But because so many parents try to live their failures, right, and they try to pass that off onto their children to be the first one who graduate from school, first one who graduate from college, get this, increase your opportunities for success. They never gave them any other route. And so, you know, a low-level thinker is always going to find only one solution to a problem. A high-level thinker has multiple solutions to a problem. So now we live in today where we have more access than any other generation ever to exist. Right? So you can learn off the internet. You can learn from artificial intelligence. You can learn from peers. You can learn from so many different people to get direct skills that can help you live the type of life that you want, rather than have to go through a slew of courses, right? Pay thousands and thousands of dollars and not use probably 10% of that information in real life.
I totally agree. I also agree that we are in the age of so much information that it's not even really being used. I mean, I think because our attention span is non-existent.
Absolutely.
And B, there's just so much distraction that's like muddled in all the information by design, so that it's like, oh, that's cool, that's interesting. Oh, but wait, let me see this over here. And you kind of go back and forth, and you spend so much time wasting time that it is wild to know that there is literally, you can do anything you want. The YouTube University is a real fucking thing. Like, I've learned so much just from listening to podcasts. Now you don't even have to read books. You can just listen to them.
That's a fact.
Like, there's so many, they've simplified everything, and yet there's still such a lack in education.
Yeah, I think mental exhaustion is a real thing. We got a thing where everybody has access to the information, but most people don't know how to think, right? Like, if you give a smart man, right, a phone, the internet, he's going to do smart things with it. You give a person that's low education and they're considered to be unintelligent and dumb, they're going to do dumb things with it because they only have the option of their resources, which is their mind, right? That's what they know what to do with it. So there's always going to be some people who use things intelligently and people who use things ignorantly, right? And so they don't mind giving tools to a society when they already know their education levels. We didn't teach y'all nothing in school. This ain't dangerous to give y'all this. Right? Just look at how you go get this phone and you go dance with it. You're not going to put out no message. You're not going to do anything that matters to the world or the system. And if you do, we just go change the rules. Go deplatform, demonetize you, deboost you. So we just go, squash any threats to what we feel like should be the society. So who are the gatekeepers, the most successful people? Those people that have the control over their algorithms and social media and the platforms, and those in positions of power, and those who already come from families of power, who, it becomes less about the education and more about the network, right? And so, you can be smart as you want to. You don't know the right people, you can't do nothing. But now we at this point where possibly you still can, because you got the internet. So you see people who are able to build themselves up to where they can become the most talked about subject in the world, possibly. And then there are some people who are stopped from becoming those subjects because they make sure that, no, that was about to go viral. Let's kill that, right? We don't want that to be the primary talk of the town. So it's a dangerous society where, you're not really free to grow, right? And so you got to learn how to play the game. The game ain't taught how to be played in school. It's not. They don't tell you how to do your taxes. They don't tell you how to do credit. They don't tell you how to build a business. They don't tell you how to utilize social media. They don't tell you how to think. They don't tell you what type of thinker you are. Right?
Well, they tell you how to think, and they tell you how to not think freely.
Well, that or positively.
Well, that's not thinking. That's like most of it is memorization.
Right.
I was listening to an episode you had on your show, and you were talking about how even the most gifted young black women, girls or boys, often when they're exposed, essentially, then they're taken from the community and put into these white schools, and they're sent to these white colleges, and then kind of used as a tool to keep the machine going. And I was like, whoa, I never even considered that. And it's so true, because even as genius as that young boy or girl may be, they don't have the wherewithal or the education to know that they can use that and bring it back to the community. It's almost like they're trained to seek the validation in whiteness.
Well, that's like the whole system, right? Like everything.
But I never realized, like, obviously that, but it's like to really think about the isolation and to take them from the community and then put them in, go to Stanford, go to Yale, where you're going to experience being the minority, but also celebrated because you're the minority and you're smart. So it's like this mind fuck of like, well, I'm the smartest one here, but I'm also like the only one here.
I think it's also like the system's so fucked is because, like, when you talk about education and even black people, like you said, like they're like, well, I didn't go to college. I'm going to give this opportunity for my child because this is the system in which we've been given. You're going to go get this higher education and do something with your life. But when the curriculum is feeding the beast and you're not learning an education that supports who you are or who your culture is or what your history is, then you're just memorizing things that have absolutely nothing to do with you or your community or how to better it. In fact, you might be a gifted child and you might test high, but you are testing high within a system that was not created for you. It was created, everything we've learned, like, you just asked us where we're from. We're from the Valley, and I've always been one of 2 or 3 black kids in every school I went to until I went to college. And that's because I chose to go to HBCU because my parents were like, oh, you need to get the fuck out of here. But it's crazy that, like, we push our kids. Well, first of all, we've assimilated to this entire system because this is just, like the history of America, essentially. But then you learn and you exceed in these systems that were never really created to put you on top. It's only created, like you said, I'll remove you, I'll put you with Billy and Joe, and then I'll put you at the top of my company so you can make me $3 million a year. And so if you're not clear about who you are and how you support your community or your family, you will think that that's the ultimate success story. So it's just like, we have to continuously examine what truly is success for us. Does it look like, Becky down the street? No, because that's a system for her. That's her education. Her parents are going to put that fucking trust fund aside for her. So she's not like starting from 0. She's starting from 100 because she has credit. She knows she has inherited a business and, and not to, like, it's just, we have to be clear as black people that our systems and our education is completely different. And we have to oftentimes be willing to reject those things and not go to those schools, even if I am bright, even if I can, and go a route that, like, evolves us in a completely different way.
Yeah, that, and you have to be connected to, not even, the word culture is just so washed down, but, an ethnic root, right? Like, you can be black, but what's your ethnicity? What is your values, your belief? What's your religion, right? What is your system? What is your principles, right? What do you take pride in? So, if you're not connected to that and you become separated from that, right? Now you think you're better than that, right? Now you're not connected to the issues. Matter of fact, you don't even know them. So you get this intelligence and you're so disconnected to what's happening in the neighborhoods, the hood, black people. Like, you can be for humanity, but it's okay to have a singular focus to say, I want to focus on black people and those problems, right? The same way, there's some women who just focus on women problems, right? There are gay people focus on nothing but gay people problems. Jewish people, Jewish problems. They only make it seem like there's a problem to be pro-black, right? And this idea is like, well, what's the opposite of pro-black? Is anti-black. So anti-black is accepted more widely than being pro-black. Right, anti-black, you can talk about murdering, killing, robbing each other. You can talk about degradation. You can talk about slinging, fentanyl to each other. That's anti-black behavior.
Black on black crime.
Right, but pro-black gets made fun of in media. Pro-black man, all of a sudden, because those tropes have been perpetuated by those people who own media. Black people didn't create those tropes, but we perpetuate them.
Well, I think about the term or the I guess, the term or the identity of a hotep, right? Because that's always comes up on the internet and amongst black women. They be like, oh shit, there's a hotep nigga. Like, oh Lord, he about to come over here and talk about good morning queen, or grand rising. And I've had to check myself because I've received it from certain people where I'm like, okay, this feels genuine, and then there's other people where I'm like, please, like, I don't know. But I think that we are so not used to even talking to each other in a positive way and greeting each other in that way that it feels facetious.
Well, look, where we learn that from, though. Like, if you first seen that in a movie you first seen that on a TV show. It wasn't never just a natural thought to you. You heard somebody else say it, so then you learned that's how I'm going to treat this person. It wasn't a natural thought that if a person treats you nice, then they corny. You know what I'm saying? Like, the Urkels of the world, they corny for being smart. I don't even know if it's the treating nice,
it's the certain words. It's a certain word, and because of the language and the certain words that I guess trigger certain women, I think because there's black men that have, especially with black women, that have presented themselves in one way and then treated them another way.
But men who said good morning and have been toxic as well.
That's
so there's been way more men that have said good morning and were more toxic than the people that you can count that have said good rising. You understand me? So you can't vilify a couple of words when your whole life people have been telling you good morning if you've had bad incidents with them.
No, I agree. You can't write off.
We learned good morning shit from the white man.
You can't write off an entire community based on like some sour apples. However, I will say, just from like both my parents from Philly. There's a lot of black Muslims in Philly.
Yeah, shout out to Philly.
Shout out to Philly. I have a lot of cousins, a lot of relatives. Even me, like I think.
Let's get to it. Come on, Jamila.
I have like. Even I, like in my even growing up in the Valley in white spaces, I got early my blackness. I was aware of it. I knew very early I was going to HBCU. Both my parents went to HBCUs. My grandparents went to HBCUs. My aunt, my uncle, like having pride in being black was very important. And like Malcolm X was like one of the first books it was mandated for me to read in my household. I think for women, or for me, let me say personally, not my issue, but sometimes when I have written off certain people or I've assumed that I've had experience is with men who identify as I'm a Muslim man and I only want to be with a virtuous woman and maybe they're highly educated and they know how to talk and they are charming and they are coming off as religious in ways and educated, and they use that same power to manipulate, which is my problem with a lot of religions in general. And we see that in Christianity. The pastors be doing all types of shit and stealing and fucking and all these shady things that are unchristian or unholy. And I mean, and I say this across the board, like I'm not into hypocrites, but I think women sometimes get a bad taste in their mouth because in certain religions, and like most of them, honestly, the patriarchy excuses behavior that's not of the word or of the study in which you follow, and then they use it as a tool to shame and belittle women. And so it immediately, when you see a man and he's like, oh, I'm a good Muslim man and a good morning queen, and you're like, I've been got before. Because let me tell you, I'll be the first to say I have been got by someone who represents himself as in a certain way, and then lo and behold, and that's my fault because I know better, you peel back some layers and it's like, oh, you're just as unhealed as a lot of these other men, but you are covering it in this religion and this cloth. And that, I think, puts a bad taste in people's mouth. And I don't disagree that we get like also how we, like you said, if like we watch media that is continuously feeding us negative imagery about ourselves, we are going to begin to hate ourselves. And let's face it, America has intentionally built its whole shit on making black people not know who they are and hate themselves, and in turn hate each other, and not, seek to know our true essence and our true nature and our true, culture and our true religion and where we came from. But I think that is my issue with the hoteps that I have come across.
Well, I mean, I don't, the word hotep is, it's a false classification. Hotep just means live in peace, right? Right. But to be at peace, rather. But
in the Urban Dictionary
what
version,
you explained was more so just, your personal experiences from the environments and relationships you had, right? It have nothing to do with the origins of how black people create this propaganda against consciousness or intelligence. That's not where that stems from. It does not stem from personal relationships. It stems from the media, right? And this is how we justify it because of our experiences that we add on top of that. Then we stigmatize it, right? But that's not the reality of where it stems from. The stem is that it comes from somebody else throwing a program and a wrench in that, saying that, no, anytime that a black Muslim or someone conscious is portrayed, make them be portrayed corny. Right. Make them be portrayed, like whether it's in Boys to Men, whether it was Damon Wayans making fun, it was make them be, or Urkel making fun of the intelligent, right? Always make them be portrayed that way, and always make the criminal or the so-called gangster be the cool one.
Be glorified.
Right? The glorified, the one that all the women want. That was not something that came from a personal experience. That was something that came from propaganda. Right. So most of us, when you really think about the root of your programming, the way you think about things now, it's not your thinking. Right. It's thinking that it was given to you. And so there's something that has to go away from that, because you can go into Muslim countries, Christian countries. Everybody going to have the same experience that you just said.
Right. Right. Fakes.
Right. Whether you are in, because we live in America and there's so many different religions, you blame that religion. Right. You blame that person in their background. But if you're in a whole Muslim country, that's just a bad apple. Right. If you're in a whole Christian country, that's just a bad Christian. Right. But because there's so many different religions, no, that's the Muslims. That's the Christians. No, that's that nigga. That's sis. Right. So I think that we overgeneralize based on our personal experiences. Right. And so we don't really think about, that's my environment. And so same idea that there's no true black on black crime. It's just proximity. Right. That's who he had to rob, because that was the closest person who had money to him. Right. That's who he got into it with. That they couldn't solve the conflict. He shot that person. Right. He wasn't particularly just seeking a black person, but he don't live next to white people. Right. And so therefore it looks like it's self-hate, but it's really environment. Right. And so it's kind of learning how to see outside of that box. Right. But now it's being played so well. Right. That, the world is screaming for, I believe, right? And my thesis is, 2022, everybody talking about masculinity and femininity and toxicity. But the reality of it is, if you really look at it, I just think that they didn't know how to ask for what was the solution. Only people knew how to talk about what was the problem, right? That's what most people know is just the problem. Oh, this is toxic masculinity. That's not what you're saying. Right? No, it's the lack of fathers. It's the lack of masculinity in the household. That's why children are decreasing in, opportunities and end up criminals, and women who are without a father in the household end up being more promiscuous. That's just a fact. It's not something I came up with.
Is that a fact?
It's a fact.
Women who grow up without fathers tend to be more promiscuous.
That is a statistical fact. Now you can look it up.
I'm curious how they know this.
Well, they do studies
and ask them how many people they fucked.
Well, yes, people are pretty honest. They do studies along with people, and then they do surveys, and then they figure these things out, and they do them year to year to figure these things out. But it was more so based upon the fact that if you take a 2-parent household, that child has, a greater chance of, being healthy, right, and possibly successful and normal. Versus a single mom household, they have a decreased opportunity versus if that child was with their father, right? So that child living with their father has the same opportunity as that child growing up in a 2-parent household.
Really?
Yes. Versus if that child has a single mother. Talk to me.
I need to see the study.
Let's get
I need to see the studies.
The world got daddy
I'm
issues.
I'm going to need the bibliography on this one.
Hold on.
Let's just talk about it. I think we can understand it logically.
Well, I'm curious. I mean, listen, you're talking to two single black mothers, who of course, more than anything, I wish me and my partner could have stayed together and we could have worked it out. Unfortunately, that just wasn't conducive to either one of our happiness. So you're telling me that my daughter living with her father is statistically she's in a better position or basically going to grow up with this I guess
masculine.
No. It's the 2-parent household, right? Like, so a child who grows up with her father is basically
has as much of a chance as if they grew up in a 2-parent household versus just the mother.
Correct.
I beg to differ. I feel like most women,
there's a level of nurturing that isn't going to be present. There's a level of I just feel like emotional intelligence that is not going to be present. And not to say that men are not emotionally intelligent, because I think that there are men that are. But there's a lot of men that are emotionally inept. And I think that women generally are a little more mature. And yes, I believe that 2-parent home is ideal.
Mm-hmm.
That is ideal. I want that. If I ever have another child, absolutely. That is my hope and prayer. But I'm not going to stay in a relationship that doesn't serve me or the family, So I'm just curious how the father takes on this role of the 2 parents.
Better than maybe just the mother.
Yeah, well, you got to look at what the child need, right? Like specifically, let's say for a boy first, right? A boy does not want to become his mother, right? So therefore, a boy going to naturally rebel against his mother because that's not who he wants to be. So your thoughts are not my thoughts as a man. I don't think like you. So the way you'll go about solving a problem, thinking about things, is not how I'm going to. If I take on your thinking, I'm going to take on feminine thinking. That's not my first mind. So I'm naturally going to rebel against the things that you say because I don't want to become you. A child wants to become their father, right? The son wants to become their father. That's what you look up to, right? In that household.
But if their father isn't a good man,
now you talking about a completely different dynamic. We just talking about a father. Right, so a young, even when a father's not a good man, their young boy still wants to know their father. They need to know what's inside them. It's actually very important.
Absolutely,
a father is like a mountain for a child. Right, the child gets to a point where you cross that mountain, where you reach the top, and you went further than your father. Right, and that's the journey of every child. Right, that's your hero. Even for young girls, their hero is their father. Right? That's the one that's going out in the world. They can't wait for their father to come back home, to teach them, to protect them, to console them. Right? And when, as a young boy, if you looking up to your father, whether you think he's a good man or not, the child don't know that. The child don't know the difference between a father being moral or immoral. They just know that that's their father. Right? And so they need something for their father. They need that comforting. They need that protection.
But
right?
if they don't get that, then what?
Then they start to seek it outside the house. They can't get that in the mom. They're still going to miss that, and they're going to miss that masculine energy. So a lot of men join gangs. A lot of men get into groups, right? They start to seek that in so many different ways of that masculine comfort, right? Same thing with young women. They seek that in men. They didn't have their father, so that's where the promiscuity starts to permit, right? But a father is a guiding force, right? It's that strong voice that you have, right? And so even oftentimes when a child, even if the father is not, or the man is not good, a child doesn't see that, doesn't know that. All he knows is that's what they want their father. You have an idea of who your father is, and you want your father to uphold that idea, right? And when you look at society today,
until he does it and they grow up and then they have.
Well, that's not all fathers. Like black men are in their children's lives more than any other men, and spend more time with their children than any other man, right? That's a known fact. Right, there are many great black fathers, and the problem is that black fatherhood is not heralded at all. Black fatherhood is known as like an enemy. That's the baby daddy, right? And so instead, without being celebrated, you have all these people with daddy issues. They never get over it, ever. Right? And they go their whole life not even knowing that their perspective, their ideology, their philosophies, their ways, their emotions, right, have never been dealt with. Shout out to Kendrick. He made that beautiful song, Daddy Issues, right? Men don't know how to become men, right? Because they never had a father in their household that taught them how to deal with those emotions. Wait a minute, son. This is how you go through this process.
So for the women that are single moms that have boys, I mean, this is something that, I think is also is important, and I've shared this too. Is I think how important it is. Say your father doesn't want to be in the picture. Mm-hmm. Say that father has passed away. Mm-hmm. Is in your opinion a second runner up would be for that woman to make sure that son has positive male figures in his
Absolutely.
life? Is that enough? Is that enough?
I don't think anything can absolutely replace a biological father, that just the normality of having a biological father. You come from that, like part of you is him. That's the essence, right? So that's who you are. So there's like things about your father that even his flaws you have to know about so you can overcome them, right? Like let's say that he was addicted to drugs. You need to know that you might smoke weed not knowing that this is an addiction that you got from him, right? So learning your father allows you to go above, right? You look at your father and this is the mountain that you must climb. This is the peak that you must go over. You like a father spoiling his child is not good. Our father is supposed to give that child the opportunity to grow and develop, right? And you don't, grow your child or your sons particularly in fear, because some fathers do that. They don't want them sons to be better than them. You're supposed to grow your son not to be like you, but to be better than you. That's the journey of a good father, right? Now, if you don't have a father in the household, not there, whatever reason, that child, like I said, it's no way to just replace that. Like you can't replace a mother, right? Completely. Like that biological mother, that biological essence, we have an attachment to that regardless. But now having that masculine energy or that feminine energy can be replaced, right? So a good, mentor or role model or, back in the day, it wasn't just single homes. This was communities, right? So there were many men that were helping raise that child, many women that were helping raise that child. You can go to elders. Nowadays, we just don't have that. Right. We have a lot of household where there's a singular authority and then that child has to rebel against that or listen to that.
Are you a proponent of women like sticking it out, like sticking it through, like just all the perils of relationship? Like I'm curious, like at what point
all the perils?
Is it at what point?
It's a lot of perils.
At what point? Like what is a good enough reason?
No, I think. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off. I think. Not the issue, but I think just like we talk about language and programming and the society in which we live in, because we're women and we're single moms. And we talked about this, like, I think for women, when there comes a time, like maybe you have a kid with someone and it's not working out for whatever reasons, I believe heavily that, like, especially for Black women, the stigma of being a single Black mom is so heavy, is that a lot of times we are conditioned as women that I'm going to stick this out for my for this family unit so that I can give my child this 2-parent home, because this is the epitome, like this is the success of, like a Black family. And I think it sometimes using that, like, obviously, yes. If in a perfect world, we would be with those people and everything would be, hunky dory, family matters. But if we are not being the language that we use around that, it has to be like, I don't think men feel that way. If a man has a baby with someone and it's not working out, they're like, all right, it's not working out, I'm out. But the levels that women, like the stigma that women feel, the disappointment that women feel about tearing your family apart is sometimes so deeply ingrained in us that I know so many women, I've witnessed women stay in situations and relationships that do not serve them. And a lot of times, if it's not serving you, it's not serving your child. So it's not serving the bigger picture, because your child feels all of that shit. You can't hide. Children have the highest emotional intelligence because they're closer to source. So if you're sticking it out to be in a relationship because you think that I'm going to beat this stigma, that is not always the programming we should be giving like moms and women, because yes, I think it's in our nature to try and make that shit work, because as Black women, we've seen so often in the media, the baby mama stigma. I'm going to be on welfare. I'm going to be broke. It's like this Saving Isaiah. I always make this example because it sticks out in my head as a child of fucking Halle Berry, like strung out and fighting for
Losing Isaiah, right?
Losing Isaiah. I'm sorry, I'm fucking the movie up. But it stuck with me, and even I saw my mom stay with my dad for years. They were together for years, not emotionally evolved enough to be in a relationship. And granted, they did, and I'm fine. I think I'm in therapy, but that was one of the biggest thing in my relationships, when I saw that person, my child's father, wasn't growing at the same rate as me, and I wasn't growing, and it wasn't productive for either of us or for my child. I made the best decision for me to walk away, because I saw my mom not walk away and evolve to a complete person. I mean, she's a complete person, but it took time, after the fact. So I just think we have to be careful of the language we use around it, because women will settle into that and fight so hard for a relationship and for a family structure that may not really be the best for that child, because it's not healthy. And, I'm in a new relationship, and I've grown. I had a baby when I was 26 and I was a baby, and there were things that I was totally unaware of that I should be checking off a list of having a child with someone. But now being in a healthy relationship, in a mature relationship where we're clear about our family structure and that we're breaking generational, traumas and things that didn't work out in our personal, family dynamics, and we're changing that actively. I understand completely, like, a healthy relationship has made me, like, being a mother easier. It's made me be a better mother because I have support in a healthy way. But I've also been in a relationship where it drained me, and I was like a skeleton of the version of myself that I am now. And so I just, like, I want to always, like, be clear to women that are listening or reading or whatever, like, you don't being in an unhealthy relationship with your partner, even if it is your child's father, if it does not serve either of you and you cannot get past that, it is not, like, necessarily healthy to try and, like, make it work.
Yeah, now, see, I think you said something key on the second part of what you're explaining. You found a healthy relationship dynamic that works for you, right? But I was explaining in the first beginning of what works, right? Now, how you make it work, that's up to you, but what works is a healthy dynamic, right, of a two-parent household. Right, where, that child gets to participate in the development with masculine and feminine getting along and helping that child be reared and developed. Right. And so that's the whole entire key. Right. Because you just explained what works. Right. Now, the problem that those other things didn't work because, they weren't healthy. They weren't right. Right. And then that's because of a cycle of things that weren't right before both of you are. Right. And so what we're talking about is, how do you break the cycle? Right. So we talk about creating healthy dynamics before children. Right. Absolutely. That, what is the expectation of being a husband? What is the expectation of being a wife? What is the expectation of being a mother? What's the expectation of being a father? Right? We're not talking about just passionate love and romanticism. We're talking about the duty that both people are going into, right? What's the long-term vision and the expectation? That child is going to have to live in, right, that reality that you all create for them. Well, that lack of conversation that you didn't have, the maturity of picking the wrong people or being together at the wrong time, that's not the child's fault that the dynamic was that between their parents. But they have to live through that, and the consequences are their development because that's their environment. So that produces their outcome partially of who they are if they don't have the grit to be able to get over that.
Or if you don't choose that, if you don't recognize, like, hey, we maybe made an early decision that we weren't really mature enough to make. And now the best healthy thing is for us to move away from each other and do this in a co-parenting and healthy space.
And the co-parenting is the super key because the other side of that, you got the baby mama drama, baby daddy drama. That's the issue because the child suffers the most.
Absolutely.
Right? The mother that hates the father, that child suffers the most. The father that hates the mother, that child suffers. So your hate against this child's father or your hate against this child's mother, who suffers? The child. Right? You can't have parents who hate each other. They go feel that because that hate produced me. Right? So how y'all go, like, it has to be an aspect of you that treat that person with love because you love me. So that's respecting the child first and foremost. Right. And so without that dynamic, that child doesn't get to see that. Right. Those moments that you think the child may not know, there's a lot of unconscious rooted seeds that get planted in that child's development. Right. They may never say anything, and it may just be a part of them as they grow up. There's a lot of mother who may, father out the household may verbally talk about that man like he ain't shit. Now that boy never wants to become that man. Right. But he doesn't realize that he doesn't know he don't want to become a man. Right. Not just his father. Right? Because that's the way she spoke about men. So now you don't even want to become masculine because it just sounded so toxic. Right? And so, same thing with the father. Your mom ain't shit. She don't know this. So now she's not developing healthily. Right? Because of y'all dynamics. So who gets the worst end of that is always the child. Right? So what I was just explaining is the same thing a doctor would explain. What's the remedy? Right? What works and what doesn't work. I don't personalize anything I talk about. I just look at the high level overview. Like, these are the science, this the facts, these are statistics, this what will work. Then we have our personal feelings towards things because of our experiences. So we go look at it and perceive it based on that. But no, let's just look at the plain facts. right? Like a child would love to be in a healthy relationship and hope that their parents made the right decision to find the right person before they were made, so that they get the opportunity of growing up in a healthy dynamic.
Are you a product of a healthy dynamic?
No.
Are your parents still together?
No.
So how do you? So,
I've seen both sides. You know, I was with my mother more than I was with my father. I had to look at my parents as human beings, right? You know, so like I speak a lot of things from experience, right? I learned as an adult to understand my parents, to not personalize their dynamics, because I was able to look at them for who they are, what they went through, what's their background, what they didn't have, what did happen to them. Right. And so instead of, you know, me taking anything personal in between, or what my mother said about my father said about my mother, I understand why two people would say those things about each other based on who they are. Right. So I remember I was young. I remember how I was in my teens when I read a book about this, and it helped me understand the dynamics so well that I was just able to forgive both of them. So I didn't hold that on to either one. Right, for them not being together, or my father not being there at times that he should have.
How old
right?
were you when this dynamic changed for you?
Early. So like I grew up, you know, mostly when I was younger, I grew up more with my father. Right, my mother ended up leaving, and I stayed at the house with my pops in Oakland. She went to St. Louis. Right, and then you know, pops ended up going back to St. Louis. So I probably was like 6, 5, very early. Right. But I was always taught about, you know, what is the healthy dynamic, right? But I also always looked up, even, you know, things I heard my mother say about my father. I still looked up to my father because I wanted to become a man. And I know I came from him, right? And then I have an older brother, and then he would give me game on what that dynamic is, right? So luckily I had somebody who could still guide and mold me. Right. But then I learned a lot from my father as well, where it's like just hearing the stories about my father and the things that he did tell me dropped so many seeds in me that I held on to him. But I think I'm I think I'm blessed to have great perspective and grit through things. Right. I don't think everybody has that. Some people take things way more personal. Some people, they can go through way less and it affects them way more. So I empathize with that dynamic. Things that make me better may destroy the next person. Right. But I know that the dynamic would have been way better if my father and my mother had a healthy dynamic.
Of course. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
And, you know, especially with they had 9 children together.
Oh, wow.
You did. So, but I understand why those things failed. And, you know, speaking to them both as adults, I've heard them have conversations with each other 40 years later that they never had. And so like that communication part of just understanding like, damn, y'all both hold on to things and you've never said the simple things to each other that would have let you understand this whole dynamic that you've had these last 20, 30 years. The stubbornness of adults that believe they're mature, right? And all these things that you create, but you still can't communicate that little bit of feeling, yet you raise a child to be emotionally intelligent.
Do you think that dynamic, because you're not a dad, right?
No, not yet.
Do you think that?
I'm a father in many ways.
Yeah, I'm sure
father. I got
you've birthed
nieces
many
and
things.
nephews.
Has that dynamic made you more aware of, I mean, essentially planting your seed like prematurely and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, one thing I understand, you know, like you definitely want to make sure you're ready. Like I got a lot of nieces and nephews, so I've seen it not work a lot. Right? I've seen it work. So, you know, and I've seen the hardships of what the single mother goes through. I've seen the hardships of what the father goes through. I've seen the CPS in the household, right? I've seen the child support. I've seen what the hate of two people in a dynamic does to that child, more so than anything. You know, so when I think about being super intentional and where we would have to be at a place in our life, because you got to think so far ahead. Your love can be great right now, but how does the dynamic of that child change everything? Because you're going to become a different person once you have a child, right? As a man, I don't go through physiological changes. I don't go through those things. Mine are all mental preparation and readiness. It's a different kind of energy for me to be ready for different responsibilities than it is for you. Your whole entire body changes, right? So it has to be a mental thing and an empathetic thing that a man goes through. But I know that for a woman to have a child before she's ready, I think it's some of the worst things you could do. You understand me? Because there's going to be regrets within that process, right? It may not come out now, but it may come out in a year later, right? You may just, a woman goes through postpartum depression sometimes. She goes through bodily change. She starts thinking of things she giving up, what kind of life she could have lived. She may go through hormonal changes. Now she mad at you of things that didn't make her mad at first, right? So there's so many different dynamics that go into that, and now we live in different kind of societies today. It's not the same society our parents lived in. They grandparents lived in. I don't know if they could make it through the world that we live in today because of the way the world is. So we have to practice new things.
And then I think a lot of times, like, people are procreating and getting in relationships for survival. And, I think it's important. I know we are a platform for a lot of moms and a lot of women. And I know we have a lot of listeners who are not moms yet or parents. And as you talk about, like, issues and discussing the things that not with just the issues, but how can we prevent the issue from continuing is like, listen, love is not enough, okay? Like, potential is not always enough. And you are not, like, waiting is not going to kill you. In fact, it's going to make you so much more happy. And like, that's another thing. Like, I even, my daughter goes to the elementary school that I went to down the street, same amount of black people, like a sprinkle. And I'm like, damn, these moms look old. But I'm like, no, bitch, they're smart. They got married, they established themselves, and then they met old Johnny and they had a baby at 40. You know what I'm saying? And in our minds, like, that's not necessarily like the image that I saw. Because look at me, I'm like, they're old. I'm like, well, they're white, but
they probably was in their 20s.
I'm 32. They're the same age as like, wow, you look so young. I'm like, bitch, we are the same age. But like when you think of just the media and like the black family structure and how often we see a healthy version of that, and like, it's just like we don't have sitcoms anymore. We have fucking Love and Hip Hop. Bitches are fighting over one ain't shit nigga. Like, what? And then, women are, and men, young men are seeing these images and like, oh, I'm going to have me a baby too. I'm going to get me a baller, and not to say like that's everybody's thinking. And I know we're all evolving constantly, but truly and of course my parents were like, you don't need to have a baby. I was 26, but you think you know everything. But just take it from two bitches who had babies, broke up with people that they thought they were going to spend the rest of their lives with, engaged in love. I had a baby with my high school sweetheart, and I loved him, and he served a purpose for that portion of my life to that level of a maturity that I was at that point. But I wasn't intentional about my own healing. I wasn't intentional. I had hopes and high dreams because the idea of it felt good. Like, I'm going to break the black family dynamic and be a unit.
Man, that sounds beautiful to me.
It does sound beautiful when you've truly went through you've truly taken the time to know yourself.
But I think,
or the writer mentality.
That also that process of like, you can know yourself early. You can know yourself at 26, at 25. It's unlearning the things you thought that were you, right? Because there's so much of the world that gets into the mind that complicates who you think you are, what you think you should be doing, what you think you should experience. And so that can get in the way of the idea of when our ancestors and our great-grandparents and grandparents lived a simpler life, right, where they decided who they were very early on. It wasn't overcomplicated. You understand me? Hey, I do this job. I live this type of life. I'm going to be with this person. We're going to make it work. Now you insert the city life. You insert the city boys and the city girls.
There's too many options.
Right, but people are not good at picking options. People are not that smart. People have mental exhaustion. Too many options is where you make bad choices. You understand me? And so the least options, you end up making better choices, right? And so they're not really options, but they're there and you exposed to them. And so you think some of them are good, but let's say 99% of them are poison. But you have so many options, you so happy. But what if you only had one option and that was the good one? Would that be a better world? Absolutely. So we live in a much more complicated world today where people want all these options, even when 99% of them are poison or toxic. And we think we live in a much more advanced world. No, we just have more toxic options.
So what do we do, Keys? Because I know you talk about mental engineering a lot, and also, what is it? What's your BWO?
Oh yeah, the Black World Order.
Black World Order, your movement. These options aren't going anywhere. The distractions are not going anywhere, and the world is moving at a faster pace. We're moving into a world where people are putting shit on their head and living in alternate realities. And, you know, AI is a real thing. And there's so much detachment happening. And so how do you use this mental engineering to save our people, essentially? Like, what is it that you're doing? Or what is your main process and goal in getting people back to, I guess, living more simply? Is that the goal?
I think it's just living true. You understand me? Living more truthfully, right? People that don't know themselves, they live a lie, right? How can you live the truth if you don't know who you are, right? You live all these other things you thought. You live a title, you live perceptions, you live opinions, right? You live what you think you need to be rather than who you are. So it's really teaching people how to reprogram themselves, right? To know who you are. Like, above all of those things, like, a person can go through an iteration of 100 things and say, I ain't found my purpose yet, right? Like, you done searched all the way in the wrong place. Your purpose is always with you. You understand me? And so understanding who you are decreases that amount of journey and process you have to go through to understand the outcome. So what I like to teach people, you know, what's the customization of self? Who are you? Knowledge of self. Right? What is your thinking type? What is your personality type? You understand me? Think about where you come from, your family dynamic. Think about your intelligence type. How do you think? Think about your background. When I say we're not taught how to think, we literally not. Right? We don't really know how to think. We don't know how to go from diversion or conversion thinking, where you're thinking of multiple solutions versus only one solution. Right? Men are not taught how to deal with women. Women are not taught how to deal with men. We're not taught how to listen to each other. We're not taught how to listen to ourselves. We're not taught about how to deal with the shadow self, that person in the mirror when nobody's there. Right? So without being able to go through that evaluation of self, you don't know what triggers you. Right? Men don't know what makes them aggressive. They don't know the triggers of what a person makes them feel lonely, or a person makes them feel angry, or a person makes, give them self-doubt. That's why so many men commit suicide. Black men are at the highest risk of suicide than any other men. Why? They don't have emotional intelligence. They don't know how to deal with these things, and they never taught self-regulation. Same thing with black women. You deal with so many, emotional experiences, but you don't know which one are true. Right? And so we're dealing with the dynamic of just not knowing self, and we're taught to everybody to be scaled on just this general test. Hey, if you a man, do this. And if you fail, then you're bad. But this man saying, well, this person, their personality or their character, their upbringing makes them more prone to actually agree with this way. This person says that, well, I actually don't agree with that at all, but we're still graded on the same systems. Same thing, a child that, one person goes to school and they like the subject, right? They get an A in it. Another student, they don't like the subject. They get a C or a D. That's not that they're not intelligent, it's not their interest, right? So therefore, they not going to be able to focus as much. You call it ADHD, is just a lack of interest. That's not aligned with who I am, right? So when you start to know yourself, you start to get to the core of who you are. You start to peel all of that stuff. What made me who I am? How do I think? Why do I think the way this way, right? So now when I know myself, I can adjust, right? When you go through that motion of healing, right? Because it's not just mental engineering. We go through physical optimization as well. So, there's working out, right? Like, I always talk about the adversity of working out, being in the gym, right?
I have a question before you go to that. Are you mostly focused on men?
No, we have a lot of women in there.
Okay, I was curious. I was wondering if it's mostly focused on men.
No, it's a lot of women. Women ask the most questions. All right, women are definitely in this space where, they're working to develop themselves. Right, because a lot of women are gaining material success but not spiritually successful. Right, a lot of women are finding capital but they're not happy. They're not finding joy. Right, and so it's one thing to understand and get a college degree and say we're the most educated, but are you the most happy? Right, are you the most satisfied? Right, are you living a joyful, abundance life in that quality? Can you brag on that?
Do you find that, or do you think that is because women generally are masculine and they're not really able to tap into their softness?
I don't think women generally are masculine. I think women develop masculine thinking.
Well, okay, yes, that's okay.
Women generally are
feminine. I don't think by nature we are masculine, but I would say in this day and age, in this capitalist society, especially with women being at the forefront of starting the most businesses and now not taking care of the household, being out of the household, we are walking into spaces where we have to put on this mask of masculinity in ways to be respected, or at least that's what we think. Even single parents, single moms having to take on both roles, right? And having to, figure it the fuck out. And so I'm just curious, like, do you think that, that the soft woman is, I guess, do you think that there is a lack of soft women in this world, and that is a result of, I guess, the spaces that men have created for us?
I think there's a lack of masculine men in this world that's making women masculine.
I agree.
All right. And so just look at the dynamic. Everybody always talk about women being the most highly educated, creating the most businesses, things of that nature. Well, what happened to the men? Like, what happened? Right? Like, because when you celebrate one, you have to say, well, why aren't these numbers growing over here? So that means that something is happening to these men where they're not developing as well. Right? So while one thing is being propped up, nobody's looking at the other side and saying something is happening with masculinity.
That's a system.
That's an issue.
Yeah.
Right? And so that conversation has to understand that these dynamics are married to each other. Mm-hmm. One is happening because of the other. Right? It's not just that one is better. Like, these men are getting destroyed.
So women are becoming successful by design.
I mean, everything in America is by design, isn't it? We live in a system.
So you think it's by design then?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Like, once you destroy a family dynamic, once you destroy, like, come on, what we've been going through in the last few years is black men getting murdered in the street. Right? And then all of these movements have been built off black men's death. The only person that don't benefit from it is the black man. Right? There's no movement about, black men need more space. Black men need this, that, and the third. Even though we have the worst statistics out of anybody in America from all categories except suicide. And that's because white men beat us there. But when it comes to, finances, when it comes to education, when it comes to cancers, when it comes to prison, when it comes to gun violence, when it comes to every other spectrum, there ain't no movements of empathy that's out there broadly. There's no corporations that's plastering that around saying we need to fight for that and make space. Right? But then there's a celebration for everybody else who's not going through those numbers and saying, well, let's just take a look at them. So it's kind of like an aha in your face. So it's making it worse. Not only is these brothers already going through stress, now we're bragging about the fact that we're making success because of the fact that you all are failing right now because you're at war. Who you at war with? What's the root cause of this? Right? And so the destruction of the family dynamic, the destruction of that masculine man is, of course, going to create a cycle. Right? This has to happen by design then. So I feel like, it's a thing where we have to be empathetic and we have to really observe and listen and look at each other. The beauty of women being able to enjoy success is amazing. When you take a high level look at it and you say, okay, well, what happened before this? We all know what happened. We was all fighting in the 60s and 70s, 80s, and the 90s. We was all talking about the crack epidemic. We was all talking about the prison population. And all of a sudden, well, black women are successful now. Right. It's like, bro, you don't think all of this is connected? We talk about the 500 years of slavery, but that's not connected to the outcome of today.
What is the benefit of black women being educated and successful? I mean, like, prior to this, like, all those things are true. Like the crack epidemic, the pipeline, like the prison system. But like, if it's by design, what are their hopes if black women are excelling, alone?
Breaking the family dynamic.
I mean, the family dynamic's been broken. That's been they mastered
because then the woman is removed from the home.
Right. If you go to emasculate. Go to any country right now in the world. You want to break up the dynamic? Go educate the women.
So what? So you think should we not be educated?
But look at the type of education they get into. It's not an education that works that makes the dynamic work. It's an education that takes them away and put them into the workforce for the government for more flow. Like why?
That's not always true. But true.
Well, where has it not worked? Where has that dynamic?
I'm just
anywhere
saying,
on the planet
a lot of women
in history
are successful do not work in the government.
We're
house.
not all working in the government, but you're paying more taxes. That's working for the government.
Essentially, if your business,
you understand me? Everybody works for the government, whether you want to or not. If you got to pay taxes, you work for the government
by birth.
You dig? So you can't get away from that dynamic. But I know for a fact that the most dangerous thing in the world would be for black men and women to get along.
Absolutely.
So, of course, anything that we can do to make sure that doesn't happen, right, will be implemented. Because once that happens and y'all focus and y'all work together, if black women are as beautiful as you are, as powerful, imagine if y'all working with us and with our ideas and we building our own world. Man, we can't have that. That'll take over fast.
I have a question. Because we know the devil of the world that we exist in, do you have, and because of your thoughts and the message that you push by promoting, you know, like unity within our culture, like in our community, have you experienced just like, I don't know how to call it, the ops? Like, like, have you experienced, your message is not.
Are you a target?
Yeah.
Are we safe?
I'm pretty sure I am. You know, I think that.
Where's your security, 19?
Shit, Allah's my security. You understand me? Like I said, I was grown for this. So, you know, this is the only thing I know. Like, I only know speaking the truth. I only know thinking in this manner. Like, this is what I've seen growing up my whole life. Right? So if I'm going to gain intelligence, then I'm going to gain it to solve the problems that I grew up with that affect me the most. If I didn't grow up in a dynamic of a household that wasn't healthy, then why wouldn't I utilize my mind to try to solve that?
Right.
Right? Like, if we have the most healthy, intelligent people, the most successful, educated women, and all these people getting this successful, how do we take that back and now figure out how to change the dynamics that created these cycles that we don't agree with? If we're that good and that intelligent and we're better and we're getting that much money, then how come we're not taking those things and pouring those resources into changing our dynamic?
Are you in a relationship, or are you married? Or
I'm in a relationship, yeah.
So how long have you guys been? How long have you been in a relationship?
2 years.
So how do you date as a man that is intentional about how you start a family and with who, and like for men that are listening and women that are listening and you know are looking for sacred, you know, partnerships and healthy relationships? What are some of the things that you look for in a partner or have looked for in order to like start essentially planting the seeds and the fundamentals of building a family for yourself?
I would think first alignment, right? Like, and I think it takes time before you find true alignment and know it's a process, right? Like, you know, believing in the same God, right? Having a healthy masculine and feminine dynamic. You understand me? Both having an understanding of knowledge of self, knowing each other, both having that internal self-love without each other.
Right.
Right? Going through that journey of healing, going through that journey of what is our vision for each other's futures, our futures together, and going through that process of planning. And of course, before the child, right? And so, like, it's just a whole journey of aligning, right? Your ethnic background, right? So if you all can come in an alignment, I think you have a long future together. But if you don't go through enough journey with each other and enough alignment, right, then you're going to find out inside the relationship, inside the marriage, like, damn, we didn't talk about this, or we didn't get to this part, or I never told you this about me, or I didn't share this, right? So I feel like, you know, when you're in any relationship, it's a lifelong journey of aligning with each other and communicating with each other and listening to each other and relearning each other and having the uncomfortable conversations, because it's like you go through trials and tribulations, and that adversity is what make you all worth it for each other. You understand me? Like, I think the idea of the belief of it's just, good selling from on here out and everything's going to be in this romantic phase forever. I think that's the delusion that people live in. But like the idea of, are we willing to talk with each other and help each other grow in those areas that we know we're going to need? Are we going to be patient with each other? Right. And then and understanding, like you talked about, understanding that if you're in a relationship with somebody, you don't stay just for the sake of staying. Stay because y'all still aligned, right? Stay because maybe I want to quit because, you don't feel like working this thing out, or that's a part of yourself you don't feel like dealing with, right? But is it really that, right? Like, or maybe, like, if you go through that, what can you get on the other side? Right? If you look at any successful relationship, it's because they went through all of that.
Right.
It's not because everything was just peaches and nice. They went through all of the goddamn arguments. They done went through all of the learning. They went through all of the crying. They went through all of those moments where they had to console. They had to communicate. They had to relearn. They have to figure out better ways to work and know each other. They grow and mature. The dynamics change. Like, committing to be in any relationship, whether it's a business relationship, whether it's a family relationship, you're going to go through peaks, valleys, up and downs. You know what I'm saying? It's like a life sign. That shit just moving up and down. You don't just get that shit smooth sailing. So for me, it's about going through a journey of alignment.
How do you think, like, professional women like ourselves maintain our softness while also being entrepreneurs and business owners, and, you know, and for women who are, you know, want to essentially be wives and be in marriage, what advice do you give for that type of balance?
No, I think Queen Afua is good advice. Yeah, I don't claim to be a man knows everything. I don't know everything, right? And you know, there's so many different ways that women can, you know, soften themselves up, right? So many practices within nature, but she does that like womb healing. You understand me? Where she helps women get in tune with themselves again and go through that journey of healing themselves and knowing themselves and doing that shadow work and going through that self-love and that self-therapy, right? So that they can be in that softness, right? You have to understand that it's no softness in the business world. That's where you become hard. That's where you become tough. Business is war. Economics is warfare, right? That's completely different. Like, go in nature, go and learn yourself again. You understand me? Like, that's where you find your softness.
I agree.
We actually had Queen on last month, and she's pretty.
See, I told you,
amazing. Do you think that women should not be in finance? I'm just curious about your view on women in finance.
No, women know how to get money. What you talking about?
That are dominating in this very warlike industry in ways.
I think women should always get money.
I don't mean they can get money other ways. I'm just saying that ideally, would your partner be in the same field as you?
I haven't dealt with that, but I don't think I would mind per se, but it depends because, you know, nobody wants to battle with their partner. You understand me? So sometimes it's good when y'all in different fields, right? Because this is my expertise, this is yours, right? So like you battling with them on something logical and they may linger over into the bedroom. You may have won this argument, right? And so that sometimes is not good because now the relationship becomes logical. Right? And so instead of, you know, love and energy and flow, you know what I'm saying? A woman is like an ocean, right? That's her emotions. Like, there's nothing logical about the ocean. You can't win that. You just have to go with the flow of it. So once she becomes logical, now she's thinking just like you. And it's like, damn, you battling yourself. Right? So, you know, a woman being in her softness is no battle there. You dig? So, you know, a woman can be in finances. There are black women where, you know, the banks of the household, they were the ones who handled finances back in the day. They knew how to handle mathematics and do those calculations. That was something that he gave to her. I make the money, baby. Hey, you handle the checkbook, right? He brung in the money, but a lot of times she was the one that paid the bills, that had to write the checks and send them off and get the bills paid. She balanced the checkbooks of the household, right? But they didn't do the same thing, so there was no argument. He trusted her to do that. She trusted him to do that. So that dynamic of, look, I got my expertise, you got yours. That's the polarities. We got the opposites. They mix, they work, they balance.
I feel that.
Well, Keys, move the mic closer to your mouth.
Me? Oh, okay, sorry. Hi.
Because you've never done this before.
Wow.
On our show, we'd like to play a little game called Trigger. And we're going to ask you, just say one word, and then the first thing that comes to mind, just say what comes to mind immediately.
Trigger, some psychological setup.
Are you ready?
Let's go.
Okay.
Religion.
God.
Feminism.
Woman.
Birth.
Woman.
Motherhood.
Woman.
Love language.
Love language. That's a good one. Understanding.
Cannabis.
Weed.
Psychedelics.
Drugs.
Mushrooms.
Shit. A trip.
Black man.
God.
White man. Oh, yeah?
I knew that was coming.
Your white friends?
You know, somebody asked me this before. I don't, but not intentionally, though.
I don't make a white friend in 2023 kids. 2023, you gonna make a white friend?
You know, listen, you trying to make me some money. We can work together. What it be? You feel me? Like, you ever heard of John Brown?
Mm-mm.
John Brown was a abolitionist. He was a white man. Man, he killed a lot of white men in the name of helping black people. Now, if I'm gonna have me a white friend,
You need a John Brown
friend.
Okay, okay.
He was cool with Frederick Douglass. Yes, that's what we need.
Favorite food?
Lasagna, I think.
Guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. Right now, it's playing video games.
Oh yeah, what video games are you playing over there?
I'm playing God of War right now.
Okay, I'm not gonna act like I know what the fuck that is. Africa.
Motherland.
Porn.
Sex.
Favorite sex position?
Love.
Open relationship?
Nah.
Pussy?
Good.
Afterlife?
I don't know.
Death?
So what's next?
Self-care?
Necessary.
Hoe?
Some of them.
Some of them. Some of them are just hoes. Ain't nothing we could do about it.
Hey,
Just some of them
you
is
know,
hoes.
Roll the dice.
Sacred sex?
Great. Tantric.
Semen retention?
Powerful.
Biggest regret?
None.
Biggest accomplishment?
Oh.
Pet peeve?
People who call me that I don't feel like talking to.
Me too.
Same. I'm like, I don't have time
It'll be-
today.
I don't answer. Or you get one word in text. Monogamy?
It's good.
Idle?
No.
Bad choices?
A lot of them.
Therapy?
Necessary.
That's it. You survived trigger.
That was good.
You feel triggered?
Nah. I don't.
You look cool as a cucumber over there. Well, we also have a segment on our show called Horror Stories.
Wait, we didn't hear your affirmation.
Oh yeah, we did.
What's your affirmation?
Affirmation.
Mr. 19 Keys?
Where there's a will, there's a way. That
Where
is my
there's a-
favorite affirmation of all time. I think I've used that like a superpower.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes.
You know, I went to Clark, so the saying at Clark, Atlanta is find a way or make one.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's along the same lines. Where
Yeah.
there's a will, there's a way. Like, nigga, you want to get there, figure it out.
Yeah.
What you gonna do?
Yeah, it's true. Do you have a hoary for us?
A hoary.
Doesn't have to be recent and you're in a relationship. It could be in your relationship either.
Yeah.
You know, you brought this up earlier. It wouldn't be nothing recent I could think about. But I remember I got a lot of brothers, right? So, you know, it was a point in time where I feel like, you know, when you're young, you're arrogant enough to think that women only want you, right? But my brothers look like me, so I had to share the world with them. And so I remember, you know, my older brother, he was very, I don't even know the word to describe him. Very tough. Let's just say that. You know, he liked to teach tough lessons. So I remember, you know, I talked to this girl one time without going into deep details. I just met her and everything, right? And this was like young. But I remember, you know, talking with her casually, ended up meeting with him. We met with each other on the train. I just met her. He just met her. You know what I'm saying? But he got eyes on her. You did? So, long story short, you know, we ended up going through an iteration of the night. It being a crazy night. Got into fights, all kind of different stuff, right? And then somehow she ended up with him at the end of the night. And I was disappointed.
That sounds like a heartbreak.
No, I didn't know her, so it wasn't a heartbreak. You understand me? And he ended up knocking those down, so that was a horror story.
That's his horror
Is
story.
she the whore or him?
Both.
I
Shit was
thought that was
horrible.
gonna be like a train ride.
Did you approach your brother like, yo, what the fuck?
I mean, I talked to him about it, but you know, you get over those things.
You never brought another woman around him, huh?
I have, but you know, the game was different then. You know what I'm saying? I had to be game tight after that.
Okay.
But I think it was a great lesson within it. But it was something I never forgot though, because that was the first time and only time that happened.
Yeah, I don't think I'd forget that either.
Yeah.
But I think men, the shit like that happens to men, and then they're like, all women are whores from Whore Island. Like, I feel like men that get like emotionally scarred from shit like that. Like when that happens at a young age,
They don't get chose.
That's why it's a horror story.
They don't get chose.
No, but
I
I always knew my
It's Kevin
potential too,
Samuels.
though. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think it was ever one of those things where you made me feel less about myself. I also knew his capabilities. Like, he was a master at this.
He was
You know
your
what I'm
older
saying?
brother. He's the older.
Yeah, not just like out of human beings, he was a master at it. Right? He could pull almost anyone. Right? So, but I thought that, you know, my game was tight and safe. Right? So I learned the lesson. You understand me? And
Watch
so,
him learn, young grasshopper.
yeah, you gotta learn some tough lessons. But, you know, growing up with a lot of brothers, like I said, you learn not to be jealous. You learn not to be envious, right? You really learn to share the world with other men.
When's your birthday?
May 4th.
You're a Taurus.
Yeah.
My dad's May 2nd. Do you believe this could be do you believe in like having multiple wives?
This is my sister called me and asked me about this.
Not your sister. Like, I need to know too.
Oh, man,
I'm happy
so
me and your
funny.
sister on the same page.
It was an intense conversation.
Why is that something she's experiencing, or is someone trying to propose that to her?
It's I don't want to go. It's her business. I don't want to go into that.
What do you believe?
She's not experiencing it, by the
Okay.
way, but it's interesting. I think I have a high level view of it rather than a personal, right? Because it's like asking a person, do you believe in same sex marriage, right?
Right.
Many people have their takes where they say they don't or they do. Then some people will say love is love. Some people will say, well, I can see how, why not let people love who they love, right? So in my political version of that, if you believe in same-sex marriage, you have to believe in polygamy. Otherwise, you're a hypocrite, right? So I believe also that men and women are different, and mostly men are different, right? Men have different character types, personality types, right? If you go throughout the world, most of the time when you find a group of like melanated black people, they're practicing polygamy, right? A large group, right? You're not going to find 45 million black people where culturally they don't practice polygamy, right? We don't, because we're not in an African culture, right? We're in a Western culture. We went through 500 years of slavery, and we practice what our slave masters practice, right? Their form of love, ideas, romanticism. So I think that the reality, which is unfortunate, that there are some men, you know, who shouldn't think about it at all. And then I think that there are some men who may be possibly qualified for it, or that's their personality type towards love. Where one man get graded on monogamy, and that's easy for him because that's all he wants.
Right.
Or another man doesn't want to practice monogamy and he's treated bad, but that was never what he want. It just was never allowed to express that because society never created an opportunity for that. So I think that polygamy should be looked at in that particular type of way. You understand me? I think it should be looked at responsibly, but most people only look at it personally. Right. And so therefore it always gets a bad rap. And so people who want to practice that, or men of resources who practice that, is held differently than a man of no resources who practice it. You look at Diddy is practicing it. You know what I'm saying? Nick Cannon definitely practicing it right now.
Would you practice it in your personal practice, in your personal relationship?
I know. I'm like, so are you going to answer? When are you going to answer the question?
No, it wasn't
Personally,
a personal
When are
question.
you going to answer the question?
Personally,
No, I'm not practicing. I'm not practicing polygamy.
Currently.
No, I'm not. I don't have a plan.
Wow.
Listen, God is the great knower.
Your
But
girlfriend's
listen,
gonna call you like,
I'm
"I
not
heard that
practicing
episode."
polygamy. I don't plan on practicing polygamy. You understand me? But God is the best of knowers. So all I'm saying is the fact that, like, I'm of the 0.001% of men. You understand me? It's not men who think like me in the position that I am, right? Financially, spiritually, intellectually, resource-wise, influence-wise, right? And I think that men today have a different experience than men of any other time. Same way women are. But the plethora of options that men get to see visually changes the dynamic of what men want, right? And so with social media and all of these different things, I think you have to take that into account the way you deal with this generation, right? Because it's unfair for men of this generation to be born under these circumstances but get graded by men of every other generation in character. So I just want people to approach the situation with empathy when you think, why are men this way? Right? Like, how did they get here in the first place? If you were a man and we're prone to look at things visually, prone to want these things, like the options are everywhere. I would listen to Minister Farrakhan talk about, it was a speech he was giving, and he was talking about, it was funny because he was explaining how like women as like he was explaining something about like, you know, men of that era. It's like the 70s. He was talking about you seeing the women out there, you know, they wearing the tight skirts and dresses, and you know you got to deal with that as a man. The temptation is everywhere, and I'm like, that's nothing to what we deal with now. You understand me? Like
tight skirt.
That's ours is on 10 times steroids. Right?
Yeah.
So the discipline that those men had to have in their generation is nothing compared to what you think the discipline of this child who don't have a father, no emotional intelligence. The world is selling sex at every single turn. Like, so now you're going to grade them by the same standards that the world had for the last 1,000 years? I think it's unfair.
It is unfair.
I mean, same with the women too. Confused, trying to, you know, be chosen. It's just we are so far from where we've come.
Yeah.
I know you talk about like I think I heard a podcast you're talking about like hoodoo and voodoo and like our original, I mean, religion really, you know, but like does the Nation of Islam, like I know in other like most strict religious like structures like Christianity, anything of that sort would be considered demonic in ways, but like because is that something that like the Muslims consider to be dark, or is that okay?
Well, we don't believe in a mystery God, so I don't believe in like, yo, that's devil worship stuff. You know what I'm saying? I look at things practically and logically. Like, you know, voodoo come from African practices and spirituality. You know, when you look at the history, it was white people who demonized it, right? Because they was getting beat by everybody who practiced it. The Haitians practiced it, they won.
Right.
Jamaicans was up there practicing with Nanny and the Maroons, they won, right? And so they didn't know how to fight against it. Then they start using it. They took it from you, used it, demonized it, but it's
repackaged
and now
it and
use
sold
it.
it back.
And
Yeah.
now use it.
same way women were called witches, but they was using herbs. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It was herbal remedies and practicing concoctions. It was chemistry, right? Black people learn how to utilize the essence of their environment. That's how we won wars. That's how we developed things. How you think we learned about herbs and remedies and things of that nature? We had to go practice and mixture and do a bunch of different things. We did a lot of like black people are innately spiritual.
Yeah.
And this is what the Western experience misses so much, right? Like the spiritual personality, the spiritual, you know, characteristics and evolution. And a lot of things can be named by something else, right? Like people believe in manifestation. It's a belief in the unseen. You can call things into existence, right? Like somebody else may say that they are they practice magic. You understand me?
Alchemist.
And yeah, this is alchemy, or somebody say they're summoning something, right? You change the word and it's demonized, right? So I think that most people are practicing the same thing. Human beings have the same power. The thing about it is the intention, right? An evil person, whatever they pick up and practice is evil.
Right.
A good person sometimes can practice something unknowingly evil, right, with good intent. So it is important to be able to filter through when you're being used as a tool for the devil with the intent of God.
Wise man.
So before we let you go, we did pull a card.
Oh, yeah.
And you pulled the Six of Wands?
6 of Wands.
I have it here.
Oh, wait. Oh, good. Because I got the wrong thing with swords. Okay.
And so let's read what the cards say about your
I just want to bring
your
to
draw.
the attention that it's a knight and his noble steed, and there's people following behind him, and he's wearing this hat that looks very much
That's
like
a crown.
Look, the
crown.
Six of
For
Wands depicts a man wearing a victory wreath around his head and riding a decorated white horse through a crowd of cheering people. His horse represents strength, purity, and the successful progression of an adventure, and the group of people marks the public recognition for the man's achievements. Upright, this card means success, public recognition, progress, and self-confidence. The Six of Wands appears when you have reached an important milestone or achieved a significant goal, and you are confident, self-assured, and successful. You harness your strengths and talents to bring about a happy outcome in your endeavors and made it through the chaos of the Five of Wands, minimizing your distractions and focusing on the task at hand. Yes, there were challenges along the way, but you overcame them by concentrating your energies on the target. The Six of Wands The Six of Wands suggests that not only have you achieved your goals, but you are also receiving public acknowledgement for your efforts. You may have recently received an award, acclaim, or recognition from your peers for your work. It may be even just a pat on the back, but this attention is a big boost to your confidence and gives you the strength to continue your endeavors. The Six of Wands is a positive encouragement to believe in who you are and your accomplishments so far. Have faith in what you've done and how others will receive it. Do not let fear or guilt stand in the way of your success. You ought to be proud. Hold your head up high and know you're worthy of admiration.
That's powerful. Thank you.
Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, very clearly, very loudly. See, it's like what, you call tarot. I'll just call it synchronicity.
Absolutely.
Finding meaning in otherwise meaningless, like meaning in coincidence. One person said, maybe that's a coincidence, but what's the meaning in it? Right? And so for me, tarot is synchronicity.
Alignment, energy, all those things.
I'm always looking for messages from the ethers, from spirit, and they can come in all ways. But before we go, this is Money March, and we're talking about money, mindset, and wealth, and abundance. And I'm just wondering, do you have any advice as far as money, mindset, and wealth for our community? If you have any advice that you have to give to the people, what would it be? Building generational wealth.
Well, I would say build the habits of wealth, right? Many people have wealth goals, but they don't have wealth habits, right? So it's like, you can want $1 million, but if you don't have the habits that will get you $1 million, you'll never get it. A wealthy man who has wealthy habits and he wants $1 million, he's going to get it, right? So you never want to have wealth habits with you don't want to have wealth goal with poor man habits, right? So what does that person do to get to where they are? So when you focus on the process versus the outcome, right? No, well, I need to research, I need to study, or I need to create me a financial plan, right? I need to develop this skill. I need to create these different streams of income. I need to do this consistently, right? Like focus on the habits that you need to develop. I need to get this type of coaching. I need to be around these type of people. I need to go in these environments more frequently, right? You want to become the person that can produce the wealth, become the person, right, that can produce the outcome that you want to achieve. So if you focus on, the process versus the outcome, then wealth is inevitable. But if you have a goal and you're not the person with the habits that can achieve that goal, it's just a wish and an illusion.
Oh, wow. I love that. That's so true. Yeah. I think a lot of people, they think that, we talked about manifesting last month or just the law of attraction. And one of the big messages is that, like, you can't just wish upon a star and shit just happens. Like, you have to put yourself in positions and places and mindsets in order to call those things in. And then how much closer can I get? Is the mic not working? And in order to call those things in, you have to be in those positions and be living that life of the millionaire that you want to be. So that's some really great advice. Thank you.
Can't make the withdrawals if you never made deposits.
It's true.
So where can our people find you?
They can find me everywhere on Instagram, 19_keys. There's a lot of fake bots.
I know, I saw that.
So you got to make sure you get the right one.
There's a lot.
I don't know why that is. There's a lot of Nigerians
all with the same picture
making fake pages. And then, of course, on YouTube, you can find me at 19 Keys, all one word. And then I have my show, High Level Conversations. And then, of course, BWO, if you want to join a coaching program, I teach every Monday and every other Wednesday. And we have the physical fitness where we go through the challenges with people for transformation. Then we have the financial literacy class and we bring in guest lecturers. But it's coaching, so we're taking you through the process, right, rather than just giving you the knowledge through a course. And then, of course, I have my book, I have my crowns, I have my health products, right? So if you want to support any of those things, when you find me, there will be a link in the bio.
I want a crown.
Absolutely.
I'm going to have to go pick that up.
I know when my afro's popping, I don't know how I'm going to wear it, but
I didn't know that was an option. I didn't know you were selling the crowns. So I was like,
we got the hats, we got the crowns, we got the bucket hats. You understand me? So we have it in, I call those are the top crowns. You understand me? So we have it in different iterations.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you know where to find us, ladies and gentlemen. Good_moms_bad choices on Instagram. Good Moms Bad Choices and all. Well, if you're listening, you know where to find us. We have a retreat coming up in July in Mexico. 2 retreats. Please come check it out and join us. We're healing the women and healing ourselves. And you guys, our book is on pre-sale. Whoop, whoop. A Good Mom's Guide to Making Bad Choices is now live on BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com if you want to feed that beast. But either way, feed us and go support 2 single moms. And, you know, we put some gems in this book and a lot of personal experiences. It's a memoir. It's prescriptive. And what else?
That's it.
We love you.
Love
Talk
you.
to you next week.
Bye.